How you doing, everyone? So today we're going to be covering all the 5 cards added in this March season: Avengers versus X-Men. We're covering season pass and then the other 4, and just my first impressions, my initial thoughts on those cards, and then we'll talk about spotlights and all the other details as we go. So should be a pretty cool one. Let's get started. And this is where I have the link to this particular video scene, but I already have the scene, so we don't have the link. Anyways, but we do have Hope Summers, so this used to be +2 energy next turn, which is absolutely broken. There was no way I thought it was going to last, so they changed it to 2+1, which I still think is pretty good, so I don't really see too big of a downside. I don't see where the downside of this card is. There's a lot of the synergies, and they've been adding a lot of energy ramp into the game with Corvus and now Hope Summers as well. So it does play differently. It's not like you're getting a downside. It's just that you have to invest to get the energy this time. So with Corvus, where you lose a card, or Electra, where you're forced to play 1 card. Here, you just have to keep playing in the card. So the curve with this is very different than regular ramp, where it goes 3, 5, 6, 7. This goes 3, and then you have to play cards. Unless you're playing Wasp, you're not likely going to be playing a card on that same turn. So you're likely going to go 3, 4, 6, 7, instead of 3, 5, 6, 7. So there are also just upsides. You can trigger in more than 1 time per turn, which I don't think there's no card that gives you 3, 4 energy, I think, in the game. So this is definitely unique, and I mean there's locations that do that, but not a card that you can consistently rely on. So if you're playing something like Hope Summers on 3, and then you're playing Jeff, Nightcrawler, another 1-drop, turn 5 you're gonna have 8 mana, which is just a lot, and you can move Jeff and Nightcrawler and keep playing in that lane. So there's definitely some interesting combos. It's a card that creates an archetype by itself, and it just seems flexible enough to be played in random other decks. So I'm definitely interested to see what happens with this, what people come up with. It just seems like they've taken their lessons with Black Swan. They thought Black Swan was going to be very good, but I didn't really see that much Black Swan after the initial days. It just kind of fell to the wayside. This one feels a little bit more, has a little bit more staying power. Energy ramp is just always strong, and it's good base stats. So this seems to probably be a big inclusion in the meta, and definitely something I'll be taking a look at to get. So my initial impressions is you probably get this, but I'll see if I make any thoughts or probably thoughts in the first impressions of the next card. We'll talk about both of them. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Think it should be good, and it seems very powerful. I wouldn't be surprised if this is too powerful or too impactful, but we'll have to see. Next up, we have Pixie. So Pixie is on reveal, shuffle the cost of all cards in the deck that started there. So it seems very intentional that this does not work with Thanos, because Thanos stones do not start there. So you're not going to be able to shuffle the stones and get 1 cost Magneto or something like that. So definitely reminds me most similar to Negative, in that once you play this, it opens up a very powerful win condition where you're scared of what your opponent might have. Where Negative, you play as you don't know if they're going to have a 0 cost Iron Man. Same thing here, you play as you don't know if they're going to have a 0 cost Magneto or Blob or anything like that. Now the downside here is that you do have to be playing you have to be playing a balanced deck, right? Which is maybe that's not a downside, but if you want 0 cost cards, you have to be playing 0 cost, and if you want 1 cost cards, you have to be playing 1 cost, right? And there's no guarantee that the shuffle is going to be in your favor, right? There's no guarantee that you're going to pull the cards you draw, and there's no guarantee that the cards you're drawing are going to be costed in the way you want, or even costed at all. If you have I'm sure 6 costs could target other 6 costs, and then you have no change, and then you're just oh, it didn't do anything. So it's definitely an interesting card. This seems very deck builder reliant. How good this card is more of a testament of how good the deck builders are. Can we build a deck that fully can win without Pixie, but becomes insane with the Pixie edition, right? Or are there decks already in the meta that fit that criteria, have a very nice 0 to 6 curve that can win super well without Pixie, and then when you play Pixie, it's like, oh my god, you open up these new combos that don't happen before, right? Because you can now do like things like Zola, like Black Panther Zola same turn, right? Kind of like you do with negative, right? Like it's now possible. But is that a consistent enough deck that you want to play where if you don't play Pixie and then Pixie doesn't discount in the right way, and then you draw those cards like very similar to negative, does your deck still win consistently, right? And that's really the question mark here. I don't know. It looks good on paper, but I don't know, like just like negative, how consistent the deck will be, right? Will it be a deck that wins when you play Pixie, but if you don't play Pixie on the right turns, it's like under 50% win rate like negative? That's my question mark there. So I'm not sure it's a strong card, but it's a card that seems fun. It's a card, if you like deck building like I do, I definitely want to test it out. So it's interesting, but like, is it meta? I'm not sure, right? Like just from my interpretation, I don't know. Next up, we have Mockingbird. Now, Mockingbird is a card I do think is very likely to be meta just because it works with Thanos. Like, this one has the opposite thing where it has to knock down your deck, so all the Thanos stones will make this discount. It's also very easy to make this like a 3/9. Very easy. Like, you play Spider-Man, Squirrel Girl, it's a 3/9. You play Mysterio, it's a 3/9. You get the Squirrel Girl, the Squirrel Land location, it's a 2/9, right? Like, you didn't do anything. You get the rock location, that's 4 rocks, right? Like that's a 1/9 right there. Like, you probably play that and then discard the turn after, right? So it just seems very easy to make this like a 2/9, a 3/9, which is very good stats, right? I'd play a 3/9 for sure, right? It doesn't get Shang-Chi, anything like that. So, and then it works with Thanos, so any stone just makes it cheaper. And there's no like 0. You can make this a 0/9 if you have 5. 5 is kind of hard unless you're playing specifically for Mockingbird, like you're playing. Like Shauna is a 2, like is 3 procs, right? So if you're playing a zoo deck, this can easily be a 0/9. But if you're not playing a zoo deck, then it's a little bit more work. But even then, like a 3/9 is playable, or 2/9 is playable, and you just need like one trigger or one card that can trigger it to make those that cost, as well as locations can do it for you, as well as like any location that gives you like a random card. If you play that card, it discounts this, right? So there's just so much synergy, in my opinion, for this card that I just don't see it not being strong. So to me, this seems like one of the strongest cards, especially in Thanos. But Thanos has a lot of options, though they did nerf Lockjaw, so maybe this can kind of fill in that spot. So I'm like, from what I think this is looking to be a pretty strong card, but we'll have to see what actually happens in reality, right? Like, so I could be wrong, but looks good to me. So yeah, definitely interested in seeing how Mockingbird pans out. Next up, we have Cannonball. Woohoo! This was a card I was most excited when I first saw it, but they did change the card, probably making it better. So it used to move a random card away and always give you a rock. Now it moves the highest card, and if you can't do that, you destroy a rock. So before, it was like, to me, it was like an expensive Stegron, which was a horrible, in my opinion. I still think Stegron's not that good. So like, it was just an expensive Stegron that could like maybe destroy if you're lucky, but it's actually quite hard to fill your opponent, like to willingly fill your opponent's lanes, in my opinion, and also have the lane that's not filled be relevant, right? That's another thing, right? You might fill their lane, but like they're playing on 2 lanes, so that third lane doesn't matter. But if you can set it up, I'm thinking maybe you play Magic Debris and turn 7 Cannonball. Like, that seems possible as a strategy. And then if you can actually get the destroy effect, you have a 5/8 Shang-Chi that destroys the highest power. It doesn't even matter if it's under 10. Like, that's very powerful. Now, can you set that up? Maybe there are some decks that can do that easily, right? Like maybe you're playing into Surfer. I mean, Surfer is not that popular. Maybe Loki. Loki's not even that. Like whatever you playing into a particular deck, then maybe you can set that up. But there are decks that like people play Destroy, and Destroy like doesn't care. Like Destroy will just eat everything, so you can't really fill their lane. So there's just some decks where this doesn't do anything, or moving doesn't matter. I mean, I do think moving is important. It's just hard to set up where moving doesn't screw you as well, right? Because if you move into another lane, you lose that lane. It's like, you know, not great. I guess if you can like force them to fill one lane, and then you could move to the other lane, they're not fighting, right? And then so that actually could work. There's definitely some potential with Cannonball. When I'm thinking about it, I could see some decks or some strategies that could really take advantage of a 5/8 destroy now, or even a 5/8 move with destroy potential. It's just like move is a risky thing to bet on because you're not always gonna be in that perfect spot, and a 5/8 is like not. It's not horrible, but it's not good, right? Like you'd rather play something stronger, like Darkhawk's a 5/4 plus 8 or 10 or something, like very easily. So even with that nerf card, you'd rather have things like that. So that's the difficulty of Cannonball, but it has potential. So uh, it's just like there's so many cards to get nowadays, right? Like I have to like be somewhat picky and like, do I want Cannonball over Pixie or over Mockingbird, that kind of thing. So that's really the question there. But maybe if I have the room, right? And then last up, we have War Machine. So this one I think is very interesting because they did confirm it works with Ebony Maw, it works with Infinite, and it just works with any location. So it's kind of like a Jeff. It's like AoE Jeff for your next turn, essentially, which is really decent in my opinion, right? Like, and I just think War Machine to Infinite's gonna see play. Like that's gonna see play. It's so solid. It's a what 10 mana 26. Like that's pretty good stat line for, and it also like opens up like some safety nets, like in case you're playing Infinite for a different reason. Maybe you're playing She-Hulk, maybe you're playing Dracula Dump or something like that. You open up just having the ability to play the Infinite without having to waste your turn. And normally, right, if you wanted to play War Machine, you pass your turn, and it's not that bad because you're playing Sunspot She-Hulk, but it does restrict Infinite to Sunspot She-Hulk, that kind of thing. Now you're not really restricted to Sunspot She-Hulk deck. You can just play Infinite in a normal deck and have it be fine. So I think that's really cool, and definitely a card I want to play with, right? Like I think this is definitely one of the more interesting cards they've released in terms of just design philosophy. Like this opens up new deck archetypes in my opinion, right? Being able to play Infinite for free, even Ebony Maw is like a 1/7 last turn. You can put that in more decks if you have War Machine, like just having it in there. Another thing that's very likely is Hope Summers into War Machine to Infinite on 5. Right? Now you have to be careful not to like just get Shang-Chi on 6, so maybe you want to do it Hope's War Machine on 5 and the Infinite on 6 or something like that. But I do think Hope Summers into War Machine into Infinite is just like, it's very clear cut, right? Like in terms of like the curve. So I could definitely see things like that happening. So it does look to be a pretty powerful season. There's a lot of interesting cards here. All of them are Series 5, which I do not like. And I would, I don't know. I wanted to make a video, but I didn't have like a good way of framing it. You know, like, oh, where are my Series 4 cards? Just whining. It seems like, to me, them making a card Series 4 lowers the value of it, and like they don't see a good upside. I think the upside is just like, hey, we like having cheaper cards, but maybe it's just like, oh, every card we make Series 4 is less popular in the spotlight compared to all the Series 5 cards. It's probably true, right? So yeah, I don't have too much there, but I definitely, I don't like it. I would definitely like them to keep having at least a Series 4, especially with them adding more cards in the pool. It just seems like, oh, you know, now all the cards are expensive. You have to really be careful. But they did say like people weren't spending their resources, so this is like seems to be like a deliberate effort to make people have to spend their resources if they want to play with everything, or at least the things that they want to play. And then last thing I want to do is just take a little bit of look at the spotlights. So I haven't done the spotlights review. I'll get to it for sure, but I'm just taking a look, right? So Pixie is with Mobius. Mobius does work. It should work with Pixie in that it negates the downside of Pixie. So let's say you have 0-1 cost 2-6, some 0 to 6, and then you play Pixie, and then your 6 cost card is now a 1 cost card, and your 2 cost card is now a 6 cost card. If you go Pixie into Mobius, your 2 cost card will remain a 2 cost card, but your 6 cost card will remain a 1 cost card. So you get both of the upsides. Now the downside to me is that you're playing 2-1 into a 3-3, right? And if your opponent's playing like a 2-5 into a 3-6 or a 3-7, right? It's like, yeah, you have to get your advantage somewhere, right? So that's like the downside there, but it is a good synergy. So definitely interested to try that out, see is that really good, is that worth it, or do you just like roll the dice and just not care? That's really the question there. But in terms of a spotlight, I mean, I guess it depends on if you have more Mobius or not, because the card is decent. Like the card is surprisingly good, so I guess if you're missing this, maybe it's good to pick up. Mockingbird with Miss Marvel, well, that makes it good already. If you don't have Miss Marvel, for sure. Man-Thing is one of the worst cards in my opinion in the game currently, so this is not relevant to me. But if you're missing Miss Marvel, Mockingbird's good. Mockingbird's good enough, you might just take it anyways. But yeah, definitely if you're missing it, for sure. Cannonball, Kitty, Ghost Spider, Eel, these are kind of bad. And Cannonball is like maybe the worst card of the set, so this is probably the one you can skip. Even if you don't have Kitty, I think Kitty has fallen off, so probably the weakest one so far. Then War Machine, Silver Samurai, Silk. These cards are solid. They're not core though. I don't think you need Silk or you need Samurai for any like core decks. War Machine just seems fun, so yeah. I mean, if you're missing them, you can get them. So they're not bad. So they're not like these where I really don't think you need these, but yeah, I'll make a more detailed guide for sure. But yeah, just looking at the spotlights, initial reactions there. But overall, those are the new cards. What are your thoughts on these? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you wish a card was slightly different or had a different stat line? Let me know. Yeah, overall, that's what I got for you today. Take care of yourselves and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Educated calling snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to marvel snap. Your skills will be